Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Barney Johnson. I'm a classical composer, and I'm reaching you here from Andernos-les-Bains, which is in the southwest of France, in the Bordeaux region of France. And I finally left my apartment in Paris, and I really enjoy being in this region of France. It's a breath of fresh air, there's wilderness, there's nature. I bought a bike, so now I'm going biking and exploring. And my goal while I'm here, I have an Airbnb just for this month, but perhaps I'll extend it. My goal is to finish my orchestra piece, Hope is on the Way, and to get a job teaching composition. Increasingly, it's looking like it's not going to happen in terms of the job. I've gone above and beyond at this point, going to bat for myself, and I've put everything I could into it, and I'm not seeing the results. So we'll see what's going to happen, but ultimately, it doesn't work out here, it's fine. I will go back to America. So today I'm going to talk to you about my opera, Le Bateau. So just to be clear, I have two operas. My first opera, Atella, is by a story by Chateaubriand. So I'm kind of setting someone else's story. And the opera I'm going to talk to you about today, Le Bateau, is going to be me who creates the entire story. That bird is saying congratulations. He's congratulating me in advance on my opera. So we're going to talk about why am I creating an opera from scratch and why not just use someone else's story. Okay, why go through all the work? Well, composers are crazy. Okay, so what are reasons why composers don't typically create their own libretto? So the libretto is like the script, or it's the story, okay? Well, it's a script, a little script, okay? The dialogue, should we say, that's then sung. I think it's just fear, okay? It's a fear, which is a bit well-founded, I would say. First and foremost, we fear like a lack of quality because we've been training all our lives to be professional composers, not professional writers. So then to suddenly have to write our own libretto is quite daunting because logically the quality could not even rival what we are capable as composers, unless we're not regular composers, I guess. But I would say, though, most composers have a higher level of literacy than the average person. Yes, I said it that way. There is a huge epidemic with illiteracy in our country. Just look at these crazy Facebook posts that people are writing. It's very clear they have a half mastery of the English language at this point. But composers typically are very well read. They love literature. They tend to read a lot. They tend to have a higher level of writing skills, reading comprehension. So I think they're better positioned than others to embark on this crazy mission. Another reason why composers don't think to do their own libretto is judgment. And that's why I didn't want to do my own libretto, because well, I want to, but I'm not a professional writer, so I don't really know how to do that successfully. And also I don't want to be judged because I'm worried that people are going to immediately assume it's not good. And there are people like that who, as soon as someone ventures out their comfort zone, they venture out their métier, as the French would say, out of their domain, then they automatically look for flaws to see that it's not good. So, and then I'd be worried, if people don't like the opera, they're going to say, oh, it's because he wrote his own libretto, or all this foolishness, Let me just look at my notes, because I think there's other things I wanted to talk about. Another issue is that problems in the libretto can lead to problems in the music. So, for example, one of the most famous examples of this would be Beethoven's Fidelio. And though it's the reverse in a way, because Fidelio is great music, but the libretto is not very good. Okay? like one of the main characters disappears, and I don't know if she ever even comes back. I think she comes back later, but we forget who she is. It's not, the story is weak. Okay, there's lots of flaws. And Beethoven really struggled to write this opera, and there's multiple versions, like there's Leonore, there's Fidelio, and that comes from a poor libretto. So that's another reason why composers don't want to do it, because if your libretto isn't right, then nothing else is going to be right. But that is more reason than ever to write your own libretto, because you can get it right. And then when something, think about it, when there's a good leader in charge, it just spreads to everyone and it goes down. But when you have a bad leader in charge, it spreads as well and it goes down. So it can go either way. Let's see. Operas, I'm not an expert on how operas are typically created, but I can just give you some general information. Typically, the librettist will write the libretto and then the composer sets it, but oftentimes there's collaboration, like the composer will give feedback or give suggestions, and there's like a kind of collaboration. That's typically how it's done. Now, there are cases of composers that have written their own libretto. And there are two famous cases, though one of them did it multiple times, so I have to say, it's not just two cases in that case, too many cases. There's two prominent composers that wrote their own libretto for an opera. And the first that we all know is Richard Wagner, who was, you know, a titan, shall we say, a German titan, just a titan of music. And his operas, like, they are in a class of their own. I don't, like some of the later operas, I don't even feel like opera is the right word to describe the experience of singing them. And much like Debussy's Pelléas et Mélisande, it's just another world. Now, Pelléas et Mélisande by Debussy, he did not write the libretto, but the sound world and the experience of the opera is so sublime and different from anything else. It's like its own genre of opera, and the same with Richard Wagner's middle to later works. And Wagner, one of the reasons why he started writing his own libretto is he felt he couldn't reach the artistic truth and the profoundness he was trying to go for unless he could control the details from the start. He could create the story itself instead of doing someone else's story. Now, the other person that I can think of that wrote the libretto is Mussorgsky for Khovanchina. Though Mussorgsky collaborated with Stassov, who was a famous Russian cultural figure, let's say at the end of the 1800s, or maybe the mid-1800s into the end of the 1800s, who was very adamant about helping, encouraging other Russian composers to reach the level of the Europeans. And ultimately, with Khovanchina, Mussorgsky's second opera, they did, in fact, surpass the Europeans in opera. Khovanchina is the opera that finally got me over my fear of writing a libretto by striking fear into me. So Khovanchina, just to give a quick description of it, and I've already talked about it in other videos, so you can just look up those videos. I'm obsessed with Khovanchina. I saw it in January 2022 at Opéra National in Paris, and then I went back twice after that, so 3 times total throughout the course of the months afterwards. And when you see Khovanchina, within the first 20 minutes, I was absolutely hooked. It was 4 hours, so I was like skeptical going into the performance, but I was like, you know what, I want to know more about opera. And I was hooked, okay? It's, the best way I can describe it, it's an opera for the people. There's no other opera, except for Mussorgsky's other opera, Boris Godunov, but that's more centered around one individual, so it's less the case. But there's no other opera that's about the people. All the other operas is about individuals. There's beautiful stories, profound, but this is the first opera I saw where I was like, this is what I was trying to achieve, or I was hoping to achieve, without ever having realized it. And for example, when excuse me. For example, When you hear the choruses, like they have the Streltsky is one group, and they have like a female chorus and male chorus, and they have children, and like it's crazy, okay? And it was in the first act. The first act is fantastic, by the way. And they kind of run out on the stage at a certain point because there's the men's soldier chorus, and it's really solemn and Russian, and you feel the pain of all of Russia. And then the people come out. And the way they sing and the music is to die. Like, these are the people that's ready to die. And I've never seen that before in opera. And they don't know yet they're going to die, but you know sometimes a people can sense it in their soul before they consciously know, and you feel it in this opera. And like the music is like dun, 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 dun. It's so, I'm not singing the pitches, but it's so intense. And it's like they're screaming, but it's not screaming. It doesn't offend your ears, but you hear like a people that's just determined, like a determination and like just a fierceness, ferociousness, and just going all in, like no fear, but then terrified at the same time. And this is why I want to write my own libretto, because I don't want to be limited by other people's stories. I see a high potential in Khovanchina. I think this is the future. Khovanchina is an opera I would bring every person in my family to. I bring my father to it, I bring my sister to it, I certainly bring my mother to it, because we go to the operas anyway together. I would bring, there's many different friends I have who aren't really interested in opera, but they're curious just because they see how obsessed I am, and I would totally bring them to it, because it's just an opera where I mean, it ends with a mass suicide. I mean, it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. I digress. So seeing the potential that opera could provide to speak to the suffering of a people, and this definitely was the intention. Like Mussorgsky worked with Stassov, and they looked back in Russian history, and they were looking for an opera to unify the Russian people and to ultimately to compete with the Europeans, because Russia at this time always felt behind the Europeans. And certainly with this opera, they surpassed the Europeans. I think perhaps the only maybe that he can compete is Wagner, but it's hard to say because they're competing in different leagues there. They have different functions.